Hello and welcome to IdeaFaqs, where we dish out ideas and feed you facts. This week, we'd like to talk about the nation's presidents. Let's start with George Washington. From a young age, George Washington had horrible dental issues. When he was inaugurated, he only had one original working tooth. His dentures were not made of wood, ivory, and human teeth that he had bought from African Americans. He also had some of his old teeth set into dentures. President number 2, John Adams, wanted the president to have a royal title and tried to bestow the title of His Majesty on his predecessor, George Washington. After being elected himself, he was mocked with the term His Rotundity. President number 3, Thomas Jefferson. Although he wrote, "All men are created equal," he believed African Americans were biologically inferior to whites and thought the two races could not exist peacefully in freedom. President number 4, James Madison. He ended his presidency without a vice president. His first VP, George Clinton, died in 1812, and Elbridge Gerry suffered a fatal hemorrhage in 1814, a year and a half after taking office. Number 5, James Monroe, is famous for the Monroe Doctrine, which was a bold statement telling European countries to stop intervening and to stop trying to colonize the Americas. Number 6, Quincy Adams. After his presidency, Quincy Adams argued on behalf of the slaves in front of the Supreme Court in the case of U.S. versus the Amistad. The court ruled in their favor, with Justice Joseph Story writing the opinion for a 7-1 majority. Number 7, Andrew Jackson is responsible for destroying the Second Bank of the United States. He founded the Democratic Party, and while he supported individual liberty, he instituted policies that resulted in the forced migration of Native Americans. Number 8, Martin Van Buren. In 1836, when Texas asked to be admitted to the Union, Van Buren blocked it, as it was a pro-slavery state, fearing that its addition would upset the balance of the country. It would be admitted 9 years later. 9, William Henry Harrison. At age 68, Harrison was the oldest president to be elected at this time. On his 32nd day, he became the first to die in office, serving the shortest tenure in U.S. presidential history. Number 10, John Tyler. Tyler was the first vice president to succeed to the presidency after the death of his predecessor. He was dubbed His Excellency by his detractors. James K. Polk. Polk led the nation into the Mexican-American War, acquiring California and much of the present-day Southwest. He kept his campaign promise to be a one-term president and did not seek re-election. 12, Zachary Taylor. The cause of Zachary Taylor's death was believed to have been the result of eating too many cherries and drinking too much cold milk. Chances are he had food poisoning. Millard Fillmore, number 13. Fillmore supported the Compromise of 1850, which held off the secession of the South and also allowed the Fugitive Slave Act. 14, Franklin Pierce. During his first year of presidency, Pierce was arrested for running over an old woman with his horse. The charges were later dropped due to lack of evidence. He was also known for having an epic comb-over. 15, James Buchanan. The only president who never married. He also had no children. He was the last president before the Civil War. He was likely chosen because he had been out of the country during the Kansas-Nebraska debate on slavery and had not been forced to choose sides. Number 16, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln wasn't only an accomplished orator in political debate, but he was also rather mouthy in the wrestling ring. He was an accomplished wrestler as a young man, having been only defeated once in 300 matches. Apparently, he was quite confident and would engage in a little smack talk. He also created the Secret Service hours before his assassination. Andrew Johnson became president after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Johnson was a Democrat who ran with Lincoln, who was a Republican, by the way, on the National Union ticket, coming to office as the Civil War concluded. He is known for being one of the 3 presidents to be impeached, the reason being that he was too soft on the South after the Civil War. 18. Ulysses S. Grant. His middle initial was not S. His name was actually Hiram Ulysses Grant. His name was submitted in error to West Point when he enrolled, and it stuck. He was a horrible businessman, but it had won the first victory of the Civil War for the Union Army. 19. Rutherford B. Hayes, the beneficiary of the most fiercely disputed election in American history. Although many famous Republican speakers, including Mark Twain, stumped for him, he expected to lose, and on election night went to bed believing he had lost. After winning due to a loophole of contested electoral votes in Louisiana, South Carolina, and Florida, months of uncertainty followed. When the election was certified, he had won by 1 vote. 20. James Garfield. James Abram Garfield was the 20th President of the United States, serving until his assassination 6.5 months into his first term. He was the only sitting member of the House of Representatives to be elected as president. His wife, Lucretia Rudolph, was first his student, marrying 5 years later. She became a reluctant First Lady for his short. 21. Chester A. Arthur. Succeeded to the presidency upon the death of James A. Garfield after his assassination, his administration enacted the first general federal immigration law, which excluded paupers, criminals, and lunatics, and also suspended Chinese immigration for 10 years. He was the son of an Irish immigrant. 22. Grover Cleveland is the only president to serve non-consecutive terms. Cleveland's real first name was Stephen, not Grover. He chose to use his middle name of Grover as an adult. He is a distant relative of the guy they named the city of Cleveland after. 23. Benjamin Harrison served as the 23rd President of the United States and was a grandson of the 9th President, William Henry Harrison. Although he received 100,000 fewer popular votes than Cleveland, he carried the Electoral College 233 to 168 without making bargains. Boss Mark Quay of Pennsylvania is quoted to have said, "Harrison would never know." A number of men were compelled to approach the penitentiary to make him president. Number 24, Grover Cleveland. After sitting out for 4 years, the third party helped Cleveland get his second term. The Populist Party took 8% of the popular vote, helping Cleveland easily defeat Harrison in the 1892 rematch by a 277 to 145 margin of the Electoral College. Number 25, William McKinley was the 25th President of the United States until his assassination. After his second inauguration, McKinley embarked on a tour of western states and was greeted by cheering crowds. In Buffalo, New York, he gave a speech on September 5th in front of 50,000 people at the Pan American Exposition. At the same event, he was shot twice in the chest at point-blank range by an anarchist who said McKinley was an enemy of the people. 26. Theodore Roosevelt. As a child, Roosevelt witnessed the Abraham Lincoln funeral procession watching from his grandfather's mansion in New York City. Roosevelt was blind in one eye after boxing injury in the White House. He suffered a detached retina and stopped fighting. He switched to jiu-jitsu instead. William Howard Taft was also the 10th Chief Justice of the nation. As president, Taft veered away from Roosevelt's policies, which led to the bitterly fought 1912 election in which Roosevelt ran as a third-party candidate, throwing the election to Taft's opponent. 28. Woodrow Wilson. Thomas Woodrow Wilson eventually led the U.S. into World War I after a period of neutrality. He wanted to make the world safe for democracy. He had high approval ratings as president. However, he is criticized for being a supporter of racial segregation and white supremacy. Warren G. Harding, pledging a nostalgic return to normalcy following World War I. Harding easily won the presidency. He died during his third year in office. After his death, a number of scandals, including bribery and his extramarital affair with Nan Britton, he was called the worst president of all time. Number 30, Calvin Coolidge. He presided over a strong economy and tried to shrink the regulatory role of the federal government, passing 3 major tax cuts. Coolidge decided he would not run for presidency a second time after the death of his son, Cal Jr., which took a heavy toll on the president, some which say led to clinical depression. 31. Herbert Hoover. A couple of months after he was elected, the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began. The president gave $25,000 each year of his personal money to help those suffering and also encouraged other wealthy individuals to do the same. He also blocked immigration, made direct loans to state governments to help the unemployed, gave more aid to federal land banks, and created a public works administration. 32. Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR was the only president to win more than 2 consecutive terms and was elected for 4. His third term took place with the United States in the throes of the Great Depression, and during World War II, he died 3 months into his 4th term, and 2 years after FDR's death, Congress passed the 22nd Amendment, limiting presidents to 2 terms. President 33, Harry S. Truman. His middle name was just S. His parents couldn't decide on a middle name for over a month, so they settled on the letter S in honor of his maternal grandfather, Solomon Young, his paternal grandfather, Anderson Shipp Truman. Truman became president upon FDR's death. He is also responsible for dropping the atomic bomb on Japan, ending World War II. 34. Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Civil Rights Act of 1957 and sent Army troops to enforce federal court orders which integrated schools in Little Rock, Arkansas. He made golf popular with a putting green at the White House and played more than 800 rounds while in office, exceeding the record of any other president. 35. John F. Kennedy. He was the first first Roman Catholic president of the United States and sparked the idealism of a new generation of Americans with his charm and optimism. He championed the U.S. space program, portrayed his leadership during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was also a victim of assassination. Lyndon B. Johnson became president after Kennedy's assassination. According to biographer Robert Dallek, Johnson met with a reporter who asked him multiple times why American troops were in Vietnam. In response, Johnson unzipped his pants, pulled out Jumbo, the nickname for his penis, and yelled, "This is why." Richard M. Nixon. Nixon said he used the comedy show Laugh-In to get elected. He was impeached when the White House Judiciary Committee approved articles of impeachment against Nixon for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and contempt of Congress. Nixon resigned from office on August 9, 1974. Gerald R. Ford. Gerald Ford worked as a fashion model during college, appearing on the cover of the Cosmopolitan. He was the first president to never be elected as president or vice president. After the resignation of Spiro Agnew, Ford was appointed to the vice presidency by Nixon. When Nixon resigned in August 1974, Ford assumed the presidency. James Carter. Carter saw aliens. He filed a report for a UFO sighting in 1973, calling it the darndest thing I've ever seen. During Carter's term as president, he established two new cabinet-level departments, the Department of Energy, the Department of Education. He also established a national energy policy that included conservation, price control, and new technology. 40. Ronald Reagan. In 1940, the University of California named Reagan the most nearly perfect male figure award. The prize was the opportunity to pose in his underwear for an art class. Reagan enacted cuts in domestic discretionary spending, cut taxes, increased military spending, increasing federal debt overall. He also survived an assassination attempt. He spurred the war on drugs, and he fought public sector labor unions. 41. George H.W. Bush. On September 2, 1944, Bush was flying over Japan when his aircraft was shot down in the Pacific. He was rescued by a submarine off the coast of Chichijima. Bush navigated the final years of the Cold War and played a key role in the reunification of Germany. He presided over the invasion of Panama and the Gulf War and ended the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait. 42. William J. Clinton, with Southern charm and perfectly symmetrically face, he ranked in facial symmetry alongside male models, got him into a bit of trouble with the ladies. He was impeached for lying about an extramarital affair with a young intern, but was not removed from office. 43. George H. Bush assumed the presidency 2 terms after his father. In retaliation for 9/11, Bush assembled an international military coalition and ordered a massive bombing against Afghanistan beginning on October 7, 2001. He became a published artist specializing in oil paintings since his retirement from public office. 44. Barack Obama. During Obama's presidency, some detractors claimed that Obama was not born in the United States, Trump for example, which according to the U.S. Constitution would make him unable to serve as president. Obama released his birth certificate, which confirmed that he was born in Hawaii. In 2012, Obama became the first president to officially sanction same-sex marriage. 45. Donald Trump. An unashamed womanizer on his third wife heckled the president for 8 years and caused a racial and social rift in the United States. Upon losing the next election, he refused to concede and encouraged his followers to attack the Capitol building. The mob threatened to hang his vice president and kill and kidnap members of Congress. Joseph R. Biden Jr. served as vice president under Barack Obama, and they enjoyed a close relationship. Did not run for president after Obama's second term as he was mourning the death of his son. He chose the first female vice president ever and is the oldest president to ever be elected. Those are America's 46 presidents. From IdeaFaqs, we hope you enjoyed our ideas and our facts.